I'd like to introduce our next speaker. He's the director of the Idfpr. It's Mr. Craig Allison. Craig.
Having me. I never dreamed Egypt would look like this. Egypt. I grew up off the Dixie Highway in western Ohio, and I got to tell you, that was some good fried chicken. But second best, because my grandma's will always be best. Again, thank you for having me. I wanted to kind of walk through what Idfpr is, what the Division of Real Estate is. As you may or may not know, real estate brokerage, which you all are engaged in, has been kicked around in regulatory world for as long as I've been alive. And finally, it has its own little home. We are trying to build it out in a way that allows you all to spend more time making the money so you can benefit from the tax cuts and spend less time worried about whether or not somebody in my office is chasing you or... Yes?
Can you just get to the microphone? I can hear what you're saying.
Absolutely. I want you to make more money. How's that? So, by way of background, I was a in-house corporate lawyer for Avis & Young, which is a commercial real estate firm operating in 5 countries. And I dealt with the licensing agencies in 37 of the 50 states. So I know a little bit about regulation madness. I also learned what motivates real estate brokers. So if I tell a real estate broker in my old firm that, if they didn't do this thing or get this license first, they'd go to jail, they'd scoff and walk down the hall. And then I'd wait and let them walk down the hall a little way, and then I'd tell them, man, you won't get paid, and they would teleport back to the wall, sit in the chair, and say, what do I sign? So I get a little bit of it. How do I change this thing?
Christy's going to have to do it for you,
Oh,
Craig.
okay, fine. So we'll tell you a little bit about the structure, the stats, and the staff. Talk about the main board that is related to the profession. It sits kind of below me as a body that makes recommendations. In the past, it has only been about discipline, but now and going forward, they have advisory powers to tell me, we think that these kinds of education issues are important, or we think the regulation should be a little bit more this way. And to the extent that we have people who are willing, who've been in the profession to spend their time sharing their wisdom and their experience, it's very valuable to me, my staff. I can't know, see, and hear everything from the 9th floor of the Thompson Center in downtown Chicago, or even when I take the Amtrak down to Springfield to my office. You all are the eyes and the ears of what's going on in the business, right? And so to the extent that we have a good working relationship with the realtors, it's very important because you are the real estate brokerage community. So what is going on? And oh, by the way, they do things very different in Chicago than in Marion. I am baffled at the wide variance in how real estate brokerage is conducted throughout the state. You would think there were at least 4 or 5 states in one, but that is the state of Illinois, and so we'll work with it that way. So we'll talk about the rest of the initiatives, but so essentially there are 4 sections within the division. Jeremy Reed, who's with me here today, he is the Chief of Licensing and Education, which at least in this calendar year, license education will probably be the hottest topic. Audits and investigations. So in the past, there were examiners of the world, and they, at some level, still sort of have that title. But the reason examiners came to be in real estate brokerage was because they were parts of banks and they didn't know what else to call them, right? So we have one audits and investigations section. These folks can go out and they can say, we're going to audit you and we'll look at your books and we'll look at your contracts and those kinds of things. But then they also will have the ability, if they see something funny going on, to say, oh, well, hey, we got a bigger problem here. Because in the past, literally, if an auditor went to an office and saw bad things going on, it was like they'd radio into an investigator and say, now you need to come. Doesn't make any sense. Not the least of which we have a relatively small staff. And then prosecutions, which is a really small staff of Now, 4 people who are attorneys that, in the administrative civil side, make sure that those cases that get investigated and are found to have violations are fully prosecuted. And, you know, we could do nothing. We could send warning letters all day long, but we also have the ability to fine people $25,000 a pop and get rid of their licenses. And to the extent that they do something really horrible, we can also refer to the state's attorneys and have them criminally prosecuted, particularly in the unlicensed context. Next slide. So this is as of the end of the year last year. You can just kind of get a sense of what goes on. We're approaching 100,000 licensees. Now that's not all real estate brokers. That's appraisers, home inspectors, community association managers, appraisal management companies. But the vast majority of that number are real estate brokers. Somewhere north of 60,000. The number of complaints is on the rise. A good 33% higher probably. Steady state probably in the past had been somewhere hovering around 1,000, but it just keeps trending up. I think they found us or something. The investigations and prosecutions, if any of you that are here have seen sort of this presentation before, there used to be a lot more prosecutions than investigations. Well, when I got here, they treated every education audit as if it was a full disciplinary case. So if you missed one CE hour, you got prosecuted the same as if you stole $1 million. Literally. We don't do that anymore. The regulatory path that I have set us on, we want to schedule the renewal dates and the CE audits significantly enough apart, 90 days, so that the CE audit happens. If you fail the CE audit, we tell you you failed it. You pay a late fee based on the number of hours you failed to do. And you still do those hours. And if you don't do those things, when you go to renew, you will be indefinitely suspended if you didn't do them. And you would still have to do them if you want to get your license back into good standing. So the number of people who are actually going to be disciplined because they failed to do CE will be, I hope, very, very small. It just seems reasonable that, you know, particularly if you're somebody, you know, think about it. If you've been in the business for 30 years and you missed an hour of CE, we're not going to turn your license off, right? We're going to tell you to do the hour. Now, if you still absolutely refuse to comply, we'll turn your license off. But I don't think you're going to do that. We talked about the enforcement piece. When I got here, there were a little over 40 people in the division doing all the work. We're down to 32. And I can tell you that we're doing it better, faster, and cheaper. The budget, around $8 million. That needle has not moved. Next slide. The licensing stats, just to give you kind of the who's doing what. I don't think there are very many leasing agents down in this part of the world, and most of them are running around in Cook County. But one thing I did learn about leasing agents, a great many of them, it's a fairly transient profession. People do it as a part-time gig. A great number of school teachers sign up to be leasing agents for the summer, when they have a summer off. So when I first got here, there was some talk that we would get rid of the leasing agent license. So of course the Chicago Teachers Union called me. I was like, oh, okay, pardon me, I had no idea. This is how you learn. Next slide. Okay, there's quick stats on Jeremy. He and I had worked in the past, and I knew he would be a great fit for this job. And if anybody that works with him, I'll tell you, he's great. I'm going to sing his praises again later, because in addition to being a very methodical person, he's also a very good design, graphic kind of guy. Next slide, please. Hector Rodriguez is the Chief of Audits and Investigations. He's the former commander of financial crimes for Chicago PD. I think he can figure out how to investigate real estate brokerage crimes. Next slide, please. Teresa Molina is the Chief of Prosecutions. She and I went to law school together at the Ohio State University. We've been friends for about 20 years. She spent all of her career until I stole her away from the Cook County state's attorney's office doing largely drug and murder prosecutions. I think she can handle real estate brokerage crimes. Next slide. Danielle Philpott is the policy manager. She essentially does all things internal for me. She's, depending on the day, she acts like my chief of staff, and some days she's, unfortunately for her, my assistant who has to make sure that my calendar isn't all over the place, because I have managed to make it to I think this is the 63rd county I've been to in the state. So a lot of dinners somewhere. I have an industry liaison position that's open. I'm hoping to fill that soon. That would be an external relations, external facing position who would come to these events when I couldn't come, and certainly interact directly with the AEs to make sure that I know what's going on from the realtor world. Next slide. So the Real Estate Administration and Broker Board, Disciplinary Board, these are the people who help us decide what is good and bad for you all in terms of your profession. There used to be 9 members, now there are 15 with the new law. There are 6 new licensee spots that the governor will hopefully appoint soon, because I want to make quorum so we can actually have a meeting. But we're going to do that, and I think you will see that I have paid particular attention in the recruitment and recommendations for those board members that they have a diversity in background, experience, product type, geography. So we have people from all over the place who do all kinds of things. There had never been a commercial real estate broker on the board. We have 2, by way of example. So we might, by the end of the year, have somebody who actually, their main gig is to manage leasing agents, which nobody's ever really thought about from the board perspective. So next slide, please. Just walk you through them. I already did that, so next slide. Denny Hiffman, he is the first commercial broker. He is the only person I know of who has successfully created 3, started from scratch, 3 commercial real estate brokerage firms in the Chicagoland area. He's been also fortunate enough to sell 2 of them for a nice price. Next slide there. So that's the end of what the board is today. There are 6 members that are being vetted and recruited to be put forward to the governor. Hopefully they'll be on board before our February meeting. They might not all be, but we'll get close. Jeremy would probably kill me if I didn't tell you that you have to renew. So for those of you that are just real estate brokers, please, and for those of you that are managing brokers who have real estate brokers, please make sure that everybody renews it in April. The sooner you do it, the better. If everybody tries to do it the last day, there will be problems. I can almost guarantee you. If for no other reason, and this I don't know how we will solve for it better, but the financial processing piece is oftentimes the hiccup. So it says you took your money, it says you paid, but from our end it gets lost in the payment process bananas, and until it gets cleared, we can't process the license. So you could have a 2 or 3 day delay based on the payments, and that can cause some anxiety. Maybe everybody should just have a real estate brokerage holiday that weekend. So, online licensing. To the extent that my boss, Brian Schneider, the secretary for Idfpr, wants to leave one legacy, I think that it would be that we would take all of the paper that we've had forever and get rid of it. Make it all digital, put everything on the internet, and make it better, faster, cheaper, and hopefully easier, which I think we're doing. All of real estate brokerage, your firm licenses, your leasing agent, managing broker, real estate broker, all those licenses are online. For those of you that are also instructors, the instructor licenses are online. We're working on the providers and the courses. We will get there this year. Next slide, please. But to the extent that we have the renewal in April, there are 2 systems. There is the initial transfer application system and the renewal system. The way that state government works for us, in order to do this, we had to do it in 2 systems now, and we will hopefully integrate to one in the next year or 2. So what that means is when you go to renew in April, you will go portal, if you want to do anything in the initial or transfer application world, you would go through that online portal, which is in the drop-down on the Division of Real Estate's tab on Idfpr's website. License transfers. So my former firm had about 300 plus licensed real estate professionals when I started. They had 2,400 when I left. We recruited a lot of people, and we needed them to transfer. And Illinois made me absolutely crazy because it could take 90 days to transfer a license. Well, if you only have a 45-day card, what do you do for the other 45 days? Not work, not get commission? That just shouldn't happen. So we've eliminated it altogether. And my hope is that we will even, in whole, really get rid of the sponsor card paper piece altogether. It'll all be a system managed online, but for right now, if somebody wants to transfer from one firm to another, they would log into the online portal, the initial transfer portal. Oh, by the way, you have to set up yourself with a username and password. If you want, for your own convenience, you should make sure that that's the same as the one that's in the renewal portal. So you would, if you're in either one, you would have the same information to use. But if I want to leave Cushman and Wakefield and go to Avis and Young, I log into the system. After I create my login, I drop my current sponsoring broker, Cushman and Wakefield. I add the new firm I want to go to, Avis and Young. Danny Nikitas, the managing broker of Avis and Young, gets an email and says, Craig Allison wants to come to work for you, yes or no? He clicks yes. My license transfers to Avis and Young. Notice goes out to Avis and Young and Danny Nikitas, to me, and to Cushman and Wakefield and the managing broker there. That transfer has happened. And in license lookup, you will be able to see within 24 hours that the transfer happened. Now, I was foolish and suggested that since my staff isn't really doing any work, we shouldn't have to charge any fee. There's a $25 fee. Apparently, saying that you're going to cut fees in the state of Illinois is not a popular thing to say. So I don't know that that's going to happen anytime soon, but that would be one that I think would be a natural one to get rid of. And to that end, for those of you that are managing brokers or operations managers for a firm, or have operation managers sitting back at your firm who you should tell, this is going to be a wonderful thing for them, not the least of which, in the license lookup, if you put in the firm's license number, you're now going to be able to see the legal name of the firm, the managing broker of the firm, any DBAs that are on file with us. And unfortunately, somehow in the past, even those people who did the right thing and gave us the DBA information, it got scanned into the abyss and it is not in our records. So we're going to have to do some cleanup there, but it will be easy. So you'd see the DBA, you'll see any branch offices, and you'll see all of the licensees in the firm. So to give you an example, that we had fired a guy in 2012 at Avis & Young. He renewed in 2014 at Avis & Young, forged the managing broker's signature. We had no idea, because there was no way to know, other than to ask about him, but why would we do that? Of course, he did something bad and somebody filed a claim. Our insurance company got upset. But that issue will now largely be resolved. And you'll be able to know pretty steadily what that is. As we have internally created a regulatory rap sheet, so if any one of you had a complaint against you, my staff would enter your name or your license number, and everything that you've ever done in IDFPR world shows up. Well, guess what? To the extent that you need a license certified history to go get a license in Kentucky or New York, or for insurance purposes, because your client, a lot of times property management clients want certified license history of the people that are going to work for them. It used to take us at least 2 months to process a request. Now, within the next 6 months, you're going to be able to go online and you'll have one like that, digitally. So that will be helpful. Next slide. This is the real-time. This is where Jeremy is brilliant. He just was able to take all these screenshots and put them all together for a really fancy PowerPoint. You'll see where the broker's dropping, adding, and then just waiting for confirmation before the transfer. Next slide. This is so to the extent that, you want to fire a whole bunch of people as a managing broker, right? You just log into your account and you just start, I'll let them go. Get rid of them. Now, keep in mind, if you get a little click happy, right? Everybody that's involved in that transaction is going to get a notice. So, brokers 1, 2, and 3 that you just terminated are all going to find out. Hopefully they are ones you meant to terminate. Next slide. So we talked about the assumed names and the trade names. For those of you that go by a shortened version of your first name, if you're James, you want to be Jim. Betsy Urbance's first name is actually Elizabeth, right? That is not a diminutive I've ever heard of. But if you want to do that, we don't care. You're going to log into that initial transfer application portal, and you're just going to put that name right there. And then it will be in the system. And at the end of the day, the first and foremost thing that we are charged with doing is protecting the consumer, and in order to do that, they need to know who they're working with, right? And that that person is licensed, and that they don't have any problems. So if they can't find the person because they don't really know the person's name, that's a problem. So James Roth and Jim Roth will both show up if you type in Jim, if Jim is in the AKA. So that will be an improvement certainly for the consumer end. Next slide, please. License lookup, we talked about that. It's all just going to keep getting better. Now, when you go to look to see all the affiliated licensees, we haven't been able to do it where, so imagine if the firm license is the main office and then there's a branch office. If you put in, you have to put in each license. So the firm license will have all the people at the main office, branch office 1, all the people in that branch office 2, all the people in that branch. My goal would be, A, to get rid of branch offices and just have one firm license. But in the meantime, we're going to make that work so that everybody shows up for the firm. Next slide. Enforcement. We're improving the complaint process. So when they come in, we know what we're doing with them and giving due attention and the right resources. So again, if it's 1 hour CD, I don't care so much. If you steal $900,000 from people, we're going to come after you like an Egyptian plague. Triaging the complaints, it just lets us get them in and out faster. The goal would be that, so at my former firm, we had a broker who had a complaint filed against him, a frivolous one, I might add. It is 2018. That complaint was filed in 2015, and the province of Alberta still has not resolved the complaint. That's a lot of anxiety. It's a lot of lawyer bills. We're going to drive that down. Next slide. So you can understand a little bit about my experience in state government. The next slide was the enforcement process as they showed it to me when I got it. If you can make sense of it, you're either lying or crazy, because the guy that drafted it told me he made it intentionally so it doesn't actually work. We just do what we want. Legit. Next slide. This is what it is now. I had Danielle, who you saw up there earlier. She's a Northwestern alum. She's a fairly sharp cookie and very organized. And I made her basically badger everybody till they told them what their part was. We ended up with a very good enforcement process. You would be surprised to know, because I was, that over 25% of the firms in the October 16 renewal did not renew on time. Okay, so in the past that apparently had no consequences. Now, what it means is we have targeted audits. So if you fail to renew, we're gonna follow up and we're gonna ask why, right? So a lot of people, we forgot to renew. Okay, pay a late fee and renew. Some of the people, there were issues. The managing broker died, the owner died, whatever. Okay, we can deal with that. But today, there are still about 600 of those firms who we are now chasing in investigations that are basically practicing without a license. That's not good. So we will get them. The disciplinary, hold on one second there. So there's the disciplinary matrix that we want to develop that would match with the investigation matrix, and that would be to provide consistency. So when you walk into municipal court because you got a speeding ticket, because you thought it was okay to drive 90 miles an hour in Macoupin County or something, you know how much you're going to pay, right? I can either pay this ticket or I can go to court. You can't figure that out in our regulation world right now. Your options are, we could do nothing to you, or we could charge you $25,000 and take your license, which doesn't sound very pleasant. So we want to make it so that people can make better informed decisions. So if you're really only on the hook for probably a maximum of $500, maybe you pay $500 instead of spending $7,000 on retainer for an attorney, right? And so that's one of the things that this board is going to help me ferret through, and then we will push it out to realtors, to the world, to our website, so everybody can know. And I will share this presentation, so you'll have that. You don't have to try to make it all into your phone. The top 5 enforcement complaints that are trending. Confidentiality, disclosure, and agency, they're kind of at the bottom of that. What's really trending in the misrepresentation world, if you represent a developer or a builder, please, for the love of God, do not put pictures of another house they built somewhere else for a property that currently looks like this golf course flat land. So I don't know why they feel the need to do this, but they're doing it, and it's just flat out misrepresentation. I mean, even making a disclaimer helps, but it's still not that, because the disclaimer is usually in the size font that even with my reading glasses I couldn't see it. Whatever it is what it is yourself until it's something else, right? Now, look, I understand that developers have pitch books and all that stuff, but when it's on Zillow and there's no real way for the consumer to figure that out, it's not going to fly. And there will be complaints, and, one time, it's probably, but if it becomes a pattern and it's clear that, you just don't care, that might cost some real money. And then the one that is by far most trending is unprofessional conduct, the inappropriate behavior of the licensed community, where people are either the Me Too movement or just coming out and sharing things that might have been pent up over time. That hey, this guy's really bad, right? Not in a doing real estate brokerage bad, but might be a bad person bad. So we can't always do something about those things. Certainly if they get convicted of a crime, we can then do something based on that. But I make it very clear that if particularly my complaint intake staff, learn of what sounds like a crime, be it rape or some kind of violence, that they go directly to the police and let authorities know that can do something about it, because it shouldn't be allowed to fester. Next slide. So this is the education transition slide that, again, thank you to Jeremy for putting that together. It'd probably take me a lifetime to do that. What you most importantly need to know, unless you're an educator, which we can follow up later about, but broker renewal is going to happen at the end of April. Whatever your education requirements are today, they are the same, and there is not some kind of new education that you would have to take. It's the same stuff. So just keep taking the same stuff through the end of April. Things are going to change. So part of what's going to change is that we are going to revise the core curriculum for the first time in over 40 years. The last time the core curriculum got a look was when Gary Clayton was at the state.
Oh my God.
Literally. So that will be worked on with the board. They will make a recommendation to me, and I will put it out for the world. And then 6 months after that happens, it will take effect. My hope is that it would have happened by January 1 of 19. I'm not sure we'll be able to do it that fast, but we're going to try. For continuing education, right? Coming from the commercial real estate world, the brokers cry all the time that it's continuing education is only about residential, and it's not really valuable to them. Okay, fine. Core, there is no more core A and core B in that world when we get there. And the 4 hours of core that we would have to take are basically here to do real estate brokerage well, right, at a legal fundamental level. That's what those hours are going to be. And the 8, before, right now for the broker renewal in April, it's 6 and 6, but in the future it's going to be 4 and 8, 4 core and 8 elective. There used to be a prohibition against the kinds of courses that could be elective. We've eliminated the prohibition. We've opened it up, so you all are sales professionals at some level. If we can find a way to have continuing education classes that allow you to be better at selling real estate, that's going to be a lot. Technology is driving all over the place, right? To the extent that there are continuing education classes that will teach you how to use the technology that's out in the world today with respect to your profession, absolutely, it will be a continuing education course if they make it so. I think those are probably the two that I am most interested in seeing. One of the things that I also want to ask, and I probably will have someone from each of the boards that make recommendations to me get together. It makes sense to me that real estate brokers and real estate appraisers might take a continuing education course together on valuation, right? Or home inspectors and appraisers might take a class together on how to look at a house, right? What's the difference between a latent and a patent defect? I'm not sure any of us know sometimes. But maybe we would have all of the, because within Idfpr we also have residential mortgage brokers and title insurance. Maybe we get all the players in the real estate transaction to be able to take a course that counts for CE together, so that they sit in the same room and hear the kinds of questions that the other professionals in the transaction think about. I think that would be value add, and we might have actually better experiences in the education that we will take. I know it's been a while, but that's all I got for you. I'm open for questions and answers. Any questions? But that's the beauty of going last. All right. Well, I'm around. Thank you.
Thank you.